Good afternoon, Allison, Julie, and Natasha. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, fine too, thanks. Right now, I am driving in the car. It looks like with mom and dad, and I'm in the middle. Actually, I'm coming to you from the movie Marnie, an Alfred Hitchcock movie. So I've got Sean Connery driving and Tippi Hedren on the other side. Um, Tippy's hairstyle does absolutely nothing for her. It was that hairstyle that was popular, I guess, in the 50s. I think that's when this movie came out. But it's one of those ones, it may sound like jealousy, but it's really not. That's not a hairstyle that should ever be remembered. A little too severe all around. But this is from the movie Marnie, and if you're interested in a Hitchcock movie, it's a half decent one to watch. So today what I wanted to do was talk about, walk through the final exam. So we can do a physical walkthrough of what to expect, get you prepared for it, show you what it's going to look like and what I'm expecting you to be able to accomplish within the 3 hours for it, okay? And after that, then we'll talk about HR auditing. So we'll talk about the auditing side of HR a little bit, get you into some of the things that come up during audits, of reasons why companies want to audit HR. It's a pretty wide open field within HR, and you have to be really specific on what you want to audit, or you can just be doing it for years on end. So you pick an area and you focus on that, and then next time you pick another area and focus on that. Some companies use external auditors. Some companies just do it internally on their own to audit certain things out. We have one teacher that I know of in her business. She teaches in the international business department, and she teaches HR within there. And her name's Sandra Piccoli, and she does auditing and other HR things on the side. That's part of what her own consulting business is. So she's given me tips on this because I don't do HR auditing. I've been a part of IT auditing, but not HR auditing. Not a lot of difference between them other than the way where we focus. So I want to talk to you about some of that today and show you some of the links that I've got to that interesting area. So I'm now into final exam study sheet. So I built up this study sheet to help you prepare for what is going to be on the final exam. So let me download this one and open it up. The idea is obviously that you can complete this in 3 hours, okay? And it's not meant to be no breathing room at all. You'll see, and that's why I want to go through it with you so you're prepared for it, that it's not just sort of thrown at you. Because I've taken this one differently. As I said, I'm treating it like a final assignment, which is the final exam. So there's not going to be multiple choice questions. There's not going to be short essay questions. What you're going to do is this final assignment, and what your results are the things that I'm going to mark for the assignment. It's broken into 3 areas. So there's an Excel file. So you work on some things within Excel. There's a rapid minor process, which is a decision tree. I want you to do a decision tree again with the data that's in this one. And there's also a Tableau presentation. So those 3 things will go together. And when you complete each one, you'll save those files and you'll upload those into the final exam folder. Okay, so 3 files, and that's all that's there. The key to this is that there's the presentation that you're going to do. So the other 2 things are gathering information and gathering data towards the presentation that you're going to do. So, and just like for the midterm that was there, I'll be in Zoom on the day of the final exam. So I'll just be sitting in there. So if you need to ask me any questions or if there's anything up technically, you can get to me in Zoom. And again, it's not that you have to be there yourself the whole time. I'll just be there. And if you come into Zoom, what I'm automatically going to do is put people in the waiting room, so that if I'm talking with someone and you're in the waiting room, just know I'll get to you as soon as I finish with the person that I'm on. Okay, so I haven't ignored you. I'm just going to deal with it one at a time. Okay, so I'll just put people in the waiting room if you've got a question, if I'm already talking to someone else. Okay, so here's the idea. Here's the scenario that we're going to be working with for this. So it's Monday morning, your HR manager comes in and she calls you into her office. And she says, I have a priority project for you, and you have to have it ready for 1 o'clock this afternoon because there's a meeting and I want you to present in that meeting. She says, okay. And she says, what I want you to do is I want you to look at how competitive are we with job offers to potential candidates that we hire in. Look at how much we offer in salary versus the triangulated salary for the same position. Okay, are we competitive? What's our acceptance rate? Do we do better hiring from resumes versus referrals versus recruiters? Do males and females accept offers equivalently? What factors contribute to employees accepting our job offer? Is there anything else we should know about this? So you're going to have 10 minutes to explain your findings and answer any questions. So that's what she's given you as a task. So she waits to see if you have any questions. You don't. She says, great. See you in the boardroom at 1 o'clock. Okay, so this has been thrown on you. So you've got 3 hours to work on this to get it ready. That's the idea of what I'm going for with this one. Okay, so we start off, and if you go into our final exam, and here's an Excel sample sheet, and let's walk through this together so you get a sense of what I'm looking for and how you can approach this. So you're going to get a sheet that's very similar to this, a lot longer. It's going to have a lot more employees within it, but the layout is going to be very similar to it, okay? And I've got certain things that I want you to do within here, and that's what's sort of laid out in this part of it here, okay? So the first thing, oops, where's my Excel sheet? The first thing, I take a look at this and I say, okay, so what do we have in here? And sometimes it's worthwhile to go back and say, so what are the key things that she's looking for, she wants me to present on? And make a little list of these things so you know where your focus should be. Now, this one leaves it open, right? What else should we know? So I'm saying, give me these things, but if you find something else in there that you think is going to explain our hiring practices out more to our senior managers, then put that in, okay? So that's why I'm leaving that. That comes into the presentation part of it, okay, of what you think is important to present on based upon the information that you're going to explore and collect within this process, okay? So it looks like this, and again, it's similar to the kind of stuff that we've looked at before. The layout is very similar. I've got a few different things in here than we've had before. So one, I've got a number of salaries within here. So I look at this and say, okay, so we've got this person, male in Calgary. That's what they were offered at the time that we hired them. This was the statistical high for the position. This was the statistical low. So the average, the low value, the high value that I capture for those. And then I calculate out a triangulated salary. We'll go with that in a second. So this was for a chief operating officer in Calgary. Okay. Now you can see it's done for all of them. This is missing. On the exam, you're going to have 4 or 5 of these that are missing. And what I want you to do is go out to job scale and fill in those missing values. Okay. So I left one in here so we could kind of do it together. So let me go up here. I'll go to a new tab. Or not a pay scale, I should say, sorry. So I'm going to go to pay scale, and I'll say pay scale Canada. Let me get the link that comes up here for us. Okay, so pay scale Canada, great. I think I can go here to jobs. Yep, so what am I looking for? So let me go back here and see what that position is. Marketing manager. Okay, marketing manager in Montreal, okay? So I'm looking for a job and I'm looking for a marketing manager. Let me see if they've already got it here in the list. Marketing and advertising. Let me click on that. Marketing manager right there from the list. Okay, so I'll select that from the list. Comes back and says, there's the average. But I can go down here and I can go down here to this part. Oops, there we go. And I can just click here on the city. So I can go down and search the city out. Okay, so it's Montreal that we're looking for, and see if it makes any change. So it makes a bit of a change to the value that's here, which is going to change the upper and lower value too, okay? So I go here and I say, okay, so the upper value is 85,000. That's the max. The min is 49,000. Okay, so I'm going to go here. So the high, 85,000, and the lower, 49,000. Okay, so now I have those two put in. So like I said, you'll do this about 4 or 5 times with other missing ones, and I want you to match out to what the position is and also where the city is, so you can get the accurate reflection of what the band is, the pay band within there. And then what I want you to do is triangulate this. So I didn't say just come up, just give their average salary there. What I wanted to do was use what we offered as the basis to calculate what that average triangulated salary would be. And if you remember before, which is going back, I think, the second week of this semester, I showed you in an Excel spreadsheet what triangulation is and how it works when you don't have all the details. In this case, we have what we need for triangulation to work. You need the lowest value, you need the highest value, and you need sort of the value that appears most frequently. Well, most frequently in this case, we've taken is our offer. That's what we're saying, is that's what we want to triangulate. What is the average salary based upon our offer, not based upon what they've calculated here with pay scale. Okay, so I go back up here and I say equals sum of what? Sum of these three. Okay, there's the first part of triangulation. You sum those three together. The second part of it is you divide it by 3. Okay, and this is how you triangulate a salary. We press enter on it, and that's what it says the triangulated salary should be based upon the based here upon the high and the low and what we're paying. It says that's where your salary should really end up, is more that level there. Okay, now I want to copy this down to each one so I can autofill it down, and there we go. So I've just got this 18 of them done through there. Next, I want to calculate residuals. So residuals are what's the difference between our actual offered salary and the triangulated salary. Okay, so say equals, take our offer minus the triangulated one. Enter. Okay, so this is telling us we're under by 42,000 on this one. Select this, auto fill it down, and there's the rest of them filled down. Okay, and we can verify this out, right? Like we can go over here and I could say, okay, am I sure? Well, hang on, I'll work that out after we get the competitiveness rate. That'll be the thing that we need to do here to make sure that we can verify it out afterwards. So we go, okay, so sorry, I've just got something else on my screen here. So now we figure, okay, so how competitive are we to the salary? To the triangulated salary? Are we over or under? In what percentage are we? Where are we in our rate there? So here I can say, well, let's take what our offered salary is here, and let's divide it by what our triangulated salary is, and we get 0.70. So we're 70% of where that salary shows up, okay? And I can click that down again, and there we go. So there's all of our competitiveness rate showing there. So this is showing where we're paying less than what the triangulated one. Anything that's under 1.0 is we're paying less. Anything that's over 1.0 says we're paying more than what that triangulated salary is. Okay, so these are important things to calculate and to figure out when we're trying to figure out how competitive are we when we're making offers to employees. And not only that, how does all this affect their acceptance? Because if I go over here further, I have offer acceptance here, yes or no. So we've got a number of employees that we've kept track of here, and we put what department they were being hired into, the information we know about them, and how did this affect any of this stuff here? How did this affect their acceptance of what we offered them as a salary and our company as a whole? Okay, so that's what we're trying to figure out here. I didn't put everything in. I don't have benefits and all that in. I'm just going with the information that's here for us to just sort of test this out and to answer the questions in that meeting that we're going to. Okay, so now we go over here, and I've got a couple other things that I'm saying. Calculate these things out to help you, that they will help you when you're trying to figure out some information here to understand how all this compares through. So the first thing here is, so we know the rates now. So we know what we're paying our employees, what the average is for that position based upon what we're paying in the statistical high and low for them, the residuals and the competitiveness rate of how we are compared to that triangulated salary. Now, what we also want to know is, how often do they say yes here? What's our percentage of people saying yes to the offers that we've given them? Okay, so I can go in here, and so looking at this, the first thing I have to do is say, okay, so this is offer acceptance. So what is the rate there? So I want to count how many yeses are here, All right. So I can say equals. Let me make that bigger so you can see it a little better too. So equals. So I want to count how many yeses are there. So equals count if, right? It says, okay, what's the range? There's my range right there. And again, on the exam, it's going to be a bigger file. You have more in the column than that there. Comma. Okay. After that, it says, what's the criteria? Well, I just want to count the yeses. So there's two ways to do that. Either I can put in double quote Y double quote, so we'll count all the yeses, and that's perfectly fine. That's the way most of the time we would do it. What we can also do is just select any one of the yeses in here, and we'll use that as the example. Okay, so count how many in that column, count how many things match what's in T15. Okay, bracket around to close it. Press enter, says, okay, you've got 10 of them there. Okay, that's 10, but I want to know the rate. What's the rate of that? So I need to divide it through, right? Of how many times did they accept versus how many times did they say no? So I'm going to go back into here. I want to divide that by the total count that we have within that column, right? So if I say count, tab to select it, again, select all the values in that column, bracket around to close it. And then if I press enter, I get that. Divide by 0. Does anyone know why? What does count count? Sounds like I stuttered, but I didn't. What does the function count actually count? Numbers. Okay, so we're telling it to count here and count the numbers, and it comes back and says, I can't, there's 0. So it takes 0 and divides it into the other number and says, you've got to divide by 0 here. So knowing this, Excel, Microsoft also did this other one where they said, well, let's give you count A, because that will count everything that is non-number within the range. So we just need to make that little change to the end of it there. So rather than count A to get what we're looking for. Now I press enter on it and it's 0.60. So I could just, at the end of it here, I could just times it by 100 to bring it up. So 55.6% of the time, based upon our little sample here, people have said yes. Not really strong, right? That's a little better than calling it heads or tails. Okay, 50% heads or tails is 55, rounded up 56%. Not really strong. It'd be greater if we were up into, 70, 80%, somewhere up within there would be great. But this is telling us no, that's not what we're getting. So then the questions come in, well, why? What is happening here? So we keep that in our mind as we're going through. Over here, I have this other calculation to figure out. So the percentage of our competitiveness rates that are greater than 1, right? So I look over here, there's our salary competitiveness rate. How many of them are greater than 1? So how many of them are we offering that's greater than the triangulated salary? Okay. So I go back over here and I say, okay, let me try this again. I need to do a count if, I'll increase the size of that again. So equals count if, yeah, and what am I checking for? Well, in this, I'm looking for salary competitiveness ratio here. Check that, comma, and what's the criteria? Well, I want to say, is it greater than 1, right? That's what I'm looking for here. Now, in a count if, or when we're comparing something out, as soon as we put a symbol in like that, that changes it a little bit, because that's not a numeric thing that we're comparing to. We've brought a symbol into it. So now we need to tell it that's a symbol by putting a double quote in front of it. So we say greater than 1.0 and a double quote around the end of it. Okay, so we encase that whole thing as a string that it's going to look for. So we want to make sure it's greater than 1.0, any of them greater than 1.0 there. And again, now I can close it, press enter. Let's see what we get. So we get 7. Okay, so there's 7 that are greater than that. Okay, so what's our percentage here of that? So again, I go back into here again, divided by the count, tab to select it, of the same range. Okay, this is numeric, so count will work on this, right? We don't have to do a count A here because it's actually numeric within there. Bracket around to close it, and again, I'll times it by 100 to get our percentage there. 38.9%. So out of the total that we've got there, 38.9% of them have said yes, or not said yes. Did we offer greater than 1%? Okay, so greater than, so what we offered, what this is trying to say is, there's the triangulated salary, there's what we offered, so therefore we're 6% higher than what the triangulated salary is. So we end up with 38.9% of the time we did that. How many are, what about an average rate increase that's greater than? And remember, where we can do greater than, we can also do less than. Okay, it's just reversing what's within there. I'm telling you that for a reason. So now I want to figure out what's the average rate increase here. So I'm saying average rate increase greater than 1%. Okay, so there's the rate increase. I want to know what the average is of these ones that are greater than 1%. What's the average rate increase that we actually have there? Okay, so equals average if. What am I looking to average? I'm looking to average this range again, comma. What am I looking for? Again, I'm looking for greater than 1.0. Bracket around to close it, comma. Now, because I said average if, here I've just been using count, so it sort of stops after this. But this I'm saying average, look in this column, average the values that are greater than 1%. So now it says, so what do you want to average? Well, I actually want to average the same column. There's not another column I need to average here. I need to average that one. So over at the final entry within here, I just select the column range again. Bracket around to close it, press enter, there. So the average is 1.07. So that's our average value that comes out of this. Okay, great. Let me go back here. So pay scale, calculate triangulated average, compute residuals, compute a salary competitiveness rate, calculate the offer acceptance, ratios greater than 1, less than 1, average rate increase greater than 1, average rate increase less than 1. Okay, so we're going through these things here. And on the test, I'll have these things highlighted in the same way. Okay, so you know where you have to fill things in. This isn't all you have to do. I'm giving you some examples here of things that you can look at. If you look at the data and see something else that's interesting within there that your eye notices something, by all means do it. I'm not trying to get you just to copy everything that I'm doing here, but I'm leading you down that this is the way that you could approach this question, not the only things that you have to do on it. Okay, now let me go back here. And I also have sum and average of residuals, because that can be important too. Because, okay, so here's our residuals. So if I go over here and say sum of residuals, and I can say equals sum, tab to select it. I'll grab the range here, enter, 166,000. So based upon 18 of them here, we are actually underpaying by 166,000. We're not even matching that triangulated value. So that's something important to know, right? How far off are we from what our triangulated average would be, which is, you know, based upon the industry high and low and what we offered at the time that we made the offer to the salary. So that's an important number to know. What's the total there? And if we know what the sum is, we can also know, right, what is the average of residuals. There, I got it. I'm amazed when my fingers type the right thing these days. So equals average, tab to select it, go back, same column, enter. So for this little sample that we've got here, we're off on average, each employee that we've made an offer of $9,227 from where our triangulated average is. Again, important information to bring forward. Okay. Now, what else can we do with this? Is there anything else that's important to look at here? Well, I thought, looking back here again, what's also important, now I haven't said it specifically within here. I've got a couple pivot tables and we'll look at those in a second. But what else? Again, these are important columns, these two columns right here, right? Because this tells us how far we are off, okay? So we know 55% of the time people say yes. In total, that's what we're off on our little sample. On average, we're off that for each offer that we make on average. Okay, keep that in mind because some we are over on. So, but residuals becomes an important thing to consider within here because part of it is, do we have any outliers in the residuals? Are there anything we need to look at? We can already go within here, right? And we can highlight out what are the values here that are greater than 1 or less than 1. And we've looked over here and we've seen what those percentages are within there. But what about if we look at the residuals on their own? Do we have any outliers in the residuals that we should really be looking at closer than just the competitiveness rate? So we can go over here and we can use some of the things that we've already done in the past, right? So I can say, I'm going to start here. I'm going to say, okay, so what's our count? How many do we have? Equals count, tab to select it, and any column of numbers here will do. So we've got 18 there. Okay, so that's the first thing. That's great. Now the next thing I want to figure out, we go here and say, okay, so what is the actual average? I'm sure I've got my columns here correctly figured out. Yeah. So what is the actual, there's the average of residuals we've got. So we've already calculated that out. So that's good. So I'm going to put that, I'm going to bring that back over here. So I'm going to say average, and I'll do the same thing here again. I'll just say average of that column there. And there we go. Okay, so count and average are two things I need when I want to be able to calculate out outliers. Okay, so now let me go underneath and I'm going to say, all right, what is Q1, quartile 1? What is quartile 3? What is the interquartile range? And what is the outlier value? And then from that, tell me what the lower bound is and the upper bound. Okay, so those are the things we need to calculate out in Excel to figure out if there's outliers within that range. Okay, so we start here with quartile 1. So we need to figure out the quartile 1, the 25th percentile of that section there. So equals quartile. Leave it on exclusive. It'll be fine for this. So the top one that comes up is exclusive. Just pick that one. Select my range here again. Comma to quartile 1. So I put a 1 in for it, press enter. So there's my quartile 1, negative number. Okay, so it's what we're going to get in residuals. What's Q3? Equals quartile exclusive, same range here, comma 3. Press enter. There's our quartile 3. Okay, so what's our interquartile range? It's Q3 minus Q1. So there's our interquartile range, 15,229. Okay, so what's our outlier value? Our outlier value is the interquartile range times 1.5. Okay, so now we can go back here and we can figure out, okay, so what's the lower bound? What's the upper bound? Equals the average, the lower bound, minus the outlier value. Okay, there's the lower bound. Anything less than that is an outlier. What's our upper bound? Equals the average plus the outlier value. Anything greater than that in residuals is an outlier. Okay, so now we can come back here and I can say, all right, let me grab the range here. Remember, your range is going to be longer on the exam part of it. And let me go up to continue conditional formatting and let me, I want to highlight any of those that are less than. Okay, so I'll say click on less than. It says, okay, here's your selection. I'm going to highlight in red anything that's less than what? Less than our lower value there. Okay, so I just have to click on that cell. Click OK, and there. So we've got 3 of them within this range. Okay, what about higher? Do we have any ones that are higher? Go back to conditional formatting. Go to highlight rules. This time I want greater than. So this time I'm going to change it from red. I'm going to change it to green this time, just so I have 2 different colors within there. Knowing red is lower, green is going to be higher. Higher than what value? Higher than that value right there, my upper bound. Click OK. No higher, not in this sample anyway, but I do have lowers there, right? So that's a key part of it there. So I've got some that are lower, but not some that are higher in this example anyway. And so the next thing is, okay, so what do I have? So that shows me I've got 3 within there. So if I didn't have, if I've got a longer list here, I want to figure out a better way. How can I count how many are within that thing? So I can go here and I can say, okay, let me calculate those that are count of lower, count of higher, should be count. And then I can go here, and again, I can do equals count if, because I want to say, take a look at this range here, right? Comma, and what do I want you to count? I want you to count any of those that are less than this value here, the lower bound. Okay, so you think of that and you go, okay, so it's a less than symbol that I need here. So I need to do double quote, less than, and then do I just select this value and double quote around it? No, that's not the way we do it. Because what happens here is, what we want here, what it's doing here is comparing anything in that is less than W32. Just that string W32. It doesn't know what to do, so it puts in 0. Okay, but we want to tell it to look at that cell there, which is W32. So we have to make a slight different change here when we're comparing to a cell as opposed to just a number that we're looking at. Okay, so I put double quotes around the symbol. So that marks the symbol. So it says a less than there. And I want to say less than and this cell. So concatenate those 2 things together. Less than in that cell value, a W32. The way I do that is with an ampersand afterwards. And let me get rid of this double quote at the end there, because that's not needed anymore. So that's how we count in a column like that, anything that is less than this value here in the residuals. Okay, so now if I put a bracket around it, press enter, so we've got 3, and we can visually see that that's exactly what it is. So then for higher, we would do the same sort of thing. Equals count if, tab to select it, select the same range here again, comma. And what are we looking for this time? Very similar. So we want to say, we want greater than this time, ampersand, that value, bracket to close it, 0. Yep. So we say, okay, so what was the sum of these things? If I want to kind of figure out, a percentage over here too, what does this represent percentage wise? Okay, so I could say, all right, so let me do the sum of them here. I know what it's going to be, but I'm just walking through the steps with you. Sum is 3, great. So now I want to figure out, so what is the percentage here? Well, there's our total count. So I can just go equals that divided by that. And next one we're going to have, that's going to be 0 there because there is nothing in the count of hires. So I'll make this one a percentage. So 17% of our offers that we made out are statistically outliers on the lower end of what the expectation is based upon the range of triangulated and our offered salaries and statistical high and low. Okay. So again, we're just exploring and gathering information and thinking about, okay, so this is information we might want to use later when we're doing up our Tableau chart on this. We might want to collect this information and think about it as we're going, so we have some things that we're going to build on for the presentation. Going back to the initial questions and saying, answering those ones off, and also figuring out, so what else is important within here, okay? Now, on these other two, I gave you a couple other things here where I said a pivot table. If you think of the hiring decisions, right? Pivot table of the hiring decisions, which is referral, recruiter, or resume. So, okay, so that's the hiring decision that was made here. So hiring decisions by the average salary competitiveness rate, which is already within here, and count by hiring decision, which is yes or no. So a pivot table that could show that, so we know that which one actually is showing us which one should we be going with, which one do we have a higher percentage of that we pay more for? Is it for people that we hire by resume? Is it for people that we hire by referral? Or is it for people that we hire by recruiters? Which one is it that we actually end up paying more for on average for the positions? Okay, so that's what I was thinking on that one. Another piece of information that could help when you're trying to explain out to senior management what you found here about our how good we are at making offers that are accepted by candidates. Okay, first of all, we know that, which is not great, and now we can explain that with some of the other things that we're building here. We can find some explanation, some context around it. Okay, the other one I said here is a pivot table of positions by average salary competitiveness, right? So very similar to this one, but rather than just hiring decisions, what about positions? So what positions out of all the ones that we have here, there's all the positions already in, which ones have the higher competitiveness rate to them? The ones that are greater than what we're offering, and lower. Can we see anything in there? Does anything show up? Are there certain departments in there that are targeted more as we make a higher offer to people in those departments than we do in other ones? So that's why I put that in, so you can think of it that way. Those two pivot tables would help you compare those things out and look for similarities that you see within that. Okay. Another thing that I said within there, male and female. What is their acceptance rate on things? Well, we look over here and we have male and female as the sex, right? And we have the offer acceptance here. So there's another pivot table. We could just do a little pivot table by sex showing offer acceptance, male and female. What's the count of them? And we can see, is it equivalent? Do the same number of males accept that we make an offer to as the same number of females? Or do we have something that's different within there? And if we do, can we pinpoint what those kind of things could be? And that leads us into the second part of the question, or of the exam part. So this is the Excel part. This is the first part, collecting as much information as you can about the data set that's here, so that you can build towards your presentation. Okay, so I've given you clues here on things that you can look for. And I also had a couple other things here that I put in, and I showed you how you could approach the outlier one. Does sex play a role? Are there any correlations worth noting? So I didn't touch those, but I'm leaving that up to you to see if it's there. Remember, you're under a time constraint here. So you want to make sure you get as much good information as you can without getting caught up in doing too much analysis and cutting yourself short at the other ends of what you need to work on. Okay, so that's part of this. It's part of any project. It's just this is more of a timed one because of the exam constraints on it. So really there's going to be 3.5 hours, right? So the exam itself is technically at 9. Once again, I will open it at 8:30, and I will be in Zoom from 8:30 till 12. Okay, so if any questions come up, I'll be in there from that point. So technically you have 3.5 hours for any technical glitches or anything that might happen that way. If your computer has to restart because your internet dropped or something like that. Okay, so the extra half hour is there for that. Okay, so we've gone through this. Save that. And I've taken you through some of this to show you how you can approach this, okay? And kind of comparisons that you can do out. So now we have this. And so the next thing becomes, okay, so let's go back here. So next is rapid minor, okay? Create a decision tree with the offer acceptance attribute as the label and summarize the decision process of the greater numbers of those who accept a job offer and those who don't. Use this to help in your presentation, to help explain things out, right? Because as we're doing all this analysis here, these numbers are all great. But if somebody says, well, what influences them saying yes or no? Well, based upon what we've got here within Excel, we could do a regression on it to try to figure that out, but it would take us a while to set this up within Excel because we'd have to convert all of these numeric alpha columns over to numeric before we could do it. There really isn't the time to work all that through. So we're going to do a decision tree again on it. So first thing I need to do is select I want the information here that we're going to use, right? Which is just all of this information. So if I was to grab this, I don't think if you have to do this on your test. No, I don't think so. I think we can do this exactly this way. So I'm going to do a save here again, just to close it up. And let me start up rapid minor. One thing I didn't check in this live transcription is if it's able to cut out any of the, yeah, it is. Okay. So it's taking out those ums. It didn't put those in when we're talking and we do those kind of fluttering things to continue to think. So it's good. So they might even be using Otter AI in here as the tool because they do have a connection with Otter AI. So they might be using that in here. That's interesting. So let me open up a blank process here and I want to import the data. So I'll click on import the data, go to my computer. It's in my downloads directory. Let me sort this around. There it is. There's my final example. That's the one that we just did there. So I'm going to say that one, hit next. It's going A to X. Let me go over here because I know it's going to have too much. It's going to try to bring in this other data that's over here, whereas I want it to stop in column T because that's all the data I need, not these other calculations I did. So I'm going to change that from A to T. Great. Okay. So that's everything within there. That's good. Define the header row in row number 1. Yep, perfect. Hit next. Is there anything missing? Nope, everything looks okay, no problems. Hit next. Where do I want to put it? I'll put it in my local repository, in my data folder, and there, I'll call it Final Management 8520 Final Exam Excel Sample. Okay, so I'll save that, finish that off. There's the data that it's brought in. So 18 examples. We know there was 18 there, and there's 20 regular attributes. So now we want to go through and we're going to filter some of this out before we do the decision tree, right? Because we want to get some accuracy in here. We don't want to overfit some things on it here. And you'll know what I mean by just a second when we look at it. So let me go to data. That was Management 8520 Final Exam Sample Excel. So let me drag that data over here into the process window, connect it up, and then I can just run it again to make sure it's yep, that's all the data, that's perfect. Go back to design. So what do I need to do here? Well, I need to select some attributes, right? I need to select certain attributes in here. So I can type in select ATT, and it comes back and says, there's a select attributes function that matches what you put in. Is that what you want? Yes. Let me drag that over, connect it up. Okay. So now we get to say, what columns do we want? By detail, it's all. I'm going to change that to a subset again, and then select the ones that I want. Okay. So what do I need? The annual salary offered. Yes. Children. Yes. Department. Yeah. Just in case that has some sort of a play on it. Distance to work in kilometers. Let's go with all of these. Employee age, hiring decision. Yes. ID of the employee. No. I don't need that for the decision tree. Industry experience, yes. Last name, no. I don't need the employee's last name. Location, where what division they were going to be hired into. Not sure that really has an influence in here on whether they would accept it or not. I don't know. I'll put it in there. Marital status. Offer acceptance. Yes, I need that one in there because that's actually what I want to resolve the decision to. So I want to look at all these columns and figure out the decision process to, did they say yes or no to the offer, and see how any of these affected that. So I need this brought over. Position, do I need to have positions in? That could make it busy in a way. I'm thinking of the details within here. They already know what position that they're hiring or that they've submitted a resume in for. It could tell us the ones that accept and don't accept. We can take a look at it and see if that's what we want, if it gives too much or not. Okay. Residuals. No, I don't want that. We already have the annual salary offered. I don't need to know the difference between the annual offered salary and how much the triangulated salary was. I do want to know the competitiveness rate though. So if I have the annual salary and the competitiveness rate, those two things are pretty good at telling me, here's what we offered, here's how competitive we were. Did those two things have an impact in the decision that was made? So I'm going to put that one over too. Sex of the employee, yes. Let's see if that has an impact. These last ones, I don't need those at all. So these calculated ones we did here, I don't really need those. I just want the annual salary offered and how competitive are we. This would be overfitting. This, we're adding a number of things that are going towards the same thing of whether they that are sort of adding into more complexity onto the actual salary itself. So I don't really need those because they don't see any of that. All they see is this. Okay. So this is the main number that they're going to see, not that. So it's not going to help me in figuring out the decision here. Okay. So those ones I'm going to leave. Click apply. Next, because I'm doing a decision tree, I have to select one column that is the label column that we're going to resolve the decision to. And that was our binomial, which was offer acceptance, yes or no. So I go back up here to operators, and I type in set role. Yeah, that's better. Set role, and there's one that comes up, drag that one over, connect it up. And now it says over here, it says, okay, so what role do you want to set for what operator? Well, I want scroll down here, offer acceptance. And I want to turn that into a label. Remember, label is the main thing. If we're doing a regression, we select a label column. If we're doing a decision tree, we select a label column. So label is the one we use most frequently when we're trying to do things out here. Those three things are selected now. Okay, so now and see what we have. There's the columns that we've selected. So we went from 20 to 13, still 18 examples. This is in green telling us that is our role. That is our label column now. That's what we've selected as our label. Perfect. So now after this is our pre-processing. Now we can do the decision tree. Back here, decision tree. Just the first one. Let's just grab the first one again, put it over. I'm not running through an accuracy check or anything on it. We're just going to go with what we see here in the results. Okay. So what do I want to see? Well, I've got, oops, pulled that out again. Get that back in. Let me reset this. View, restore default view. There we go. Okay. So there's my decision tree back in. I've got the decision tree going out. That's great. I can say put the example set over to. That's fine. That should be all I need. I'm going to go with the defaults that are here to start with. Let me see what we get out of this. So run it. Okay. Let me look at the decision tree. Little narrow here, right? There's not too much showing there. Here's a large yes here. Here's a very large yes. If I mouse over that and see 27.8%, so 5 yeses appeared here out of the 18. Okay. And what was it? So less than if they were offered less than 123,000, they drove to work less than 29 kilometers, and their competitive ratio was less than 92. They said yes. So that number of them out of this, remember, it's a small sample set. On a larger sample set like you'll have, it's going to make a bit more sense than what that one does on its own. It's so small, it's not good for a decision tree because it's so small. We can do it, but we're limited. But this isn't giving me enough detail here. So I want to go back to design And let's look at decision tree here. Now remember, maximum depth says how many branches do you want to have going off here? This says 10 is the maximum. So don't go any higher than 10. So I can say, well, what if we go to 15 and let me run it again? Take a look at it. You go, well, that didn't make any difference on it. No, that's interesting. So if it's not the branches that are causing it to sort of be truncated up, what is it? Well, if we have a tree and it's really been pulled back and is not expanding out, that's when we look at it and say, okay, what are we pruning this too much? Are we cutting back too much so we're not getting any details? First one that we want to take off is the bottom one. It sort of goes up in sequence. I'm going to remove pre-pruning. And I'm going to say leave this all the same. So I'm going to stay still 15 as a maximum depth. Let's see if we take off the pre-pruning. Let's see what we get as the results now. Still looks a little bit different here. We've got a little bit more showing out on it. On the exam, you will see far more detail coming through. Not unmanageable, but we will get more detail. I just need to get up for a second and close my window. I think they're cutting the grass outside. Kind of stops it, not completely, but I can hear it. I'm not sure if you guys can hear it. So now I've got this down. So now I look here and I've got, okay, so less than 123, less than 29, less than 92. So that's still there. Here's another one. And this one says the same three things there, but the sex is male and greater than 36,000. So between 123,000 and 36,000 with a competitiveness that's greater, or I should say greater than 9.4. So greater than, just slightly under what that competitive equivalent value of 1.0 would be. So greater than that, but we've got males selecting here. We've got females not selecting here. Okay, so that's an interesting thing to see within here because we can see the decisions that are being made on. So why is it the males that are selecting here and the females aren't? Again, we've only got a small sample set here, so you're not seeing this clearly. Okay, so you'll want to make note of what you get here because you'll want to jot this down a little bit so that you can show this, take a snapshot of it, and you could paste that in or just refer to it on its own. You want to refer to that within the what you're building within Tableau on it. Okay, so here's the bit of information that we could find on it. So I want you, when you finish this off, when you've got this and it's what you want, then you go up to here and you do you save it. So I'm going to click save on it and I'm going to put it into my local repository, into my processes. And I'm going to call this my final exam process. And okay. And then after it's saved, I want to do file, export that process out. I'm going to save it into my downloads and I'll call it the same. It doesn't keep it here for you. Final exam process and save it. There's your RapidMiner process for me. So I can see what you created within here and how you're using that information in the final that you presentation you can create. So here's where I've split the marks. So 40 for the Excel part, 20 marks for the RapidMiner, and 40 for the Tableau part. Okay, so now we've done the main part of data gathering within here with those two. The final piece is Tableau. Okay, so I want you to do a presentation up. You've got 10 minutes. Okay, that's all you've got. So you're not going to create dozens of slides here and dozens of dashboards. I want you to pick key things that you could present to people, senior managers, in 10 minutes, going back to what you're asked to do here and make sure you're answering those questions and anything else that you think is important they should know, right? So what I'm going to mark you on within here are what your choices are. So what are the things that you've decided to choose that you want to present on? What is important? I want you to put it in a Tableau story. I'll open up Tableau again in a moment and just sort of walk through that a little bit of where this stuff goes in. So put that into a story. So I want to see what your sequence is, the flow of the story of how you're trying to assemble this for management. And how well can I follow your presentation? think a little bit back to Nancy DeRape here. And what she said was, you think about, am I with the presentation? Am I delivering it, or like presenting it, or am I distributing it? In this case, you're distributing it. I'm not there. Okay. So what you're going to have to do is put in text boxes. In the text boxes, tell me what what you would be telling them in the presentation itself. Don't create a whole tons of paragraphs on things. Just give me the key points on what you would want to get across to them in the presentation so I can follow your thinking through. Okay. That's the final exam. Now, in my mind, walking through this on my own and doing it, that feels fair. Does that feel the same way to you three?
Yeah, I think so. Especially since you just kind of went through everything, so
yes,
which helps. So I think it's pretty fair.
Okay, good. Yeah, I didn't feel comfortable just giving you this sheet and saying good luck. I wanted to walk through it too, so you know what you can expect because of that time frame.
No, I appreciate that too.
Okay. Do you have any questions on this? Does anyone have a question on it? Okay.
I guess, sorry, Ken.
Sure, Julie.
So you're going to open up Tableau, because I followed along from last week and created the Excel sheets. Are you going to show us RapidMiner in Tableau?
Yeah, what I'm going to do is we're going to have a break, and after the break, I'll open up Tableau and we'll walk through that a little bit. I'm not going to go through all the details. I want you to do that, but I'm going to open up Tableau and show you the other things just to make sure you're clear on how to add the text and how you could bring in a snapshot of RapidMiner and stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what I wanted to show you is what I was saying as far as within Tableau, how you can use some of this information that you've already calculated up within Excel if you want to, and within RapidMiner. Okay, there's no direct connection between RapidMiner and Tableau. There just isn't. They haven't done that with it yet. Created that connection out to it. I shouldn't say that completely. There is an extension that we can get, but you have to be running RapidMiner server in order to make that connection through. And I've played with that one a number of times, and it's a really difficult one to set up. And it has nothing to do with what we'd be doing in the exam anyway, but just wanted to clarify there is, but it's not applicable to us. So back in RapidMiner, if we go back here to our results and look at our decision tree that we've got, and if I want to make this a little bit bigger, right? If I want to increase the size of that, which it's not allowing me to do by hand right now, so we'll do it this way. I can keep bringing it over. Not sure that's making it, yeah, a little bit bigger. So if I wanted to snapshot that, because I want to include this in the conversation that I'm having, right? So I could select that. So I've got that whole range selected there. And then I could just take a snapshot of it or a screenshot of it in Windows, right? I open up the snipping tool, grab that one on a Mac, Control-Shift-4, and then grab the range out here like this. Just click there, drag across, there's one done. And if I want to show, well, here's the equivalent one for females, I can select the no one for females, Control-Shift-4, grab that too and save it. And anything else that I want to save. So I'm saving the images here that I'm interested in, okay? And then when I'm done that, again, exit out of RapidMiner. I don't need anything from RapidMiner after that, after getting my results there. So now if I open up Tableau, I forgot, I meant to ask you, how many of you have signed up for the student version? Did that go okay? Natasha, did you try putting the details in I said? Did they accept it?
They accepted it after I asked for review, so it was fine. I didn't need to. Yeah. Okay,
that's good. Allison or Julie, have you signed up for the Tableau student version?
Yeah, they let me have it right away. I actually just downloaded the confirmation of registration, and I sent that, and they accepted it right away.
Yep, great. How about you, Allison?
I haven't signed up yet. I was just reading that note you posted when just right before class, so I'll probably do that later tonight.
Okay. Yep. No problem. You'll just want to make sure it's there for you for the exam, or else it will time out by then, and then you're going to have some troubles.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So let me just open up an existing one here that we did up last week, just so I can show you some of these areas. So remember, these are the individual sheets. So in your presentation, I was just thinking this. I think I'm going to change this slightly here. And in here, I'm going to say, I want you to include at least 2 Tableau created charts. Okay. So you want to have to create at least 2 within Tableau. Outside of that, you can use data that you've had, anything that you wanted to snapshot from Excel or snapshot within RapidMiner. Okay. But I want at least 2 charts within Tableau that are natively created within there. Okay. And so remember, what we have is the individual sheets here that we calculate out on our own, and then a dashboard. Now the dashboard is where we can do all of this, bring in external things. On the story itself, we can't. The story only works with what we've got here, but it works with dashboards. Okay, so if I go back here and click on dashboard 2, look at the very bottom here with objects, image. Okay, so I can click on image, drag it up, drop it in. And it says, okay, what image do you want? I'm going to choose it out. I'm in my desktop where any of those snapshots I took. So let me see. Yep, there's the female one. So I'm going to click and open that up. Let me see. This time I'll fit the image in. There, that's a little bit better. And then, okay, so I've got that as an image here within this dashboard. And that's the only thing I need to have there is that image for this specific dashboard. So that's fine within there. And then if I go to stories, and this is right now called dashboard 2, I can change it and I'll call it female decision. Go to stories. There's female decision. I can drag it in here, and then I could add my own text box into it and explain what I want people to understand about this. Okay, so that's how you incorporate this into external images and things into Tableau, into stories, by doing them first within a dashboard, and then adding the dashboard itself into one of the story slides that you want. So here is my description about the female offer acceptance. Okay, and then I can move this around to where I want it to be. And so this is the kind of thing I'll be looking for, what you're using in a slide and the detail. This isn't detailed enough. I'd be explaining out what this is here, what's important here that I'm trying to get across by comparing the 2 of those out, right, is probably what I do. And I could have a female description here. I could go back to dashboards, and I could also say, let me grab another image here. And this time I'm going to grab the male one, which was that one. Although that looked like the whole screen. Yeah, that was the whole screen. Let me see that. That's better. I'll say that one, open that up, fit the image in. There we go. That's great. And I'll call this one male acceptance. Now I can go back to my dashboard that was there, dashboard 1. Not sure where my dashboard 2 is now. Create another one here. Oh, no, sorry, that was my dashboard that I was doing. No, it's not. Sorry, I'm getting lost on what I'm creating here. Yeah, there we go. So now I'm on the story. So there's female decision, male acceptance. So what I can do is I can grab this image, pull it in, grab the next image, and say, it's only going to let me do a replace. Because they're images, it's not going to allow me. I was hoping it was going to allow me to show them side by side, but unfortunately, it's not going to do that within here. Now, I'm not sure back in here. If I look at this one, No, because they're images as opposed to sheets here. So no, they'd have to be showing up in separate ones. I couldn't remember exactly how that works in it, but they'd have to be separate images on separate slides within the story. Okay, so that's the one problem, not problem, but it just, I can't show them side by side here. And I don't want to take you into an editing application where you can bring both images side by side and save them as one image. Let's forget that one for now. Let's just work on them as two separate images. So explain this one out, explain the next one out, and talk about in the text box what the connection is between the two of them. So you'll do up your at least 2 Tableau visualizations. Okay, so whatever 2 you decide to do, and you can use the pivot tables in Excel to sort of help you decide what you want to do with the Tableau visualizations too. They could be a way that you model what you want to do within Tableau. And then after that, any of the snapshots you want to grab from RapidMiner. And if there's anything else that you've done within here that you want to take a snapshot of the same way, then you could do that, and you could include that snapshot in as what you're doing. If you didn't want to figure out exactly how to do it all within Tableau, you could snapshot an area of the screen here and include that as an image in what you're trying to get across. Okay, so that's how I want you to approach the final part of the Tableau part of it. Now, what I did this week is I also, so that is, we finish off here. So that is the whole exam. So that's what I want you to do, 3.5 hours to work on it. Okay. So again, this one, these ones, the Excel part, I'm going to look at everything you've done. Did you fill out the main things? What did you decide was important? I'm going to look at all that from the mark perspective in here. In RapidMiner, it's just making sure you've got the decision tree, you've got enough details in, you've selected the right fields, you're not overfitting things, all that sort of stuff within the RapidMiner piece of it. So the Excel file, you save it. You'll upload it when you're done to the final folder, exam folder, the RapidMiner. You'll save the process, export the process, upload that process to the final exam folder. Tableau, you go in, you create your at least 2 slides directly in Tableau, bring some images in to help you fill in context around those of the other things we had in RapidMiner and anything in Excel, and then create the story for me, including text into it. So you're explaining out what's important on the screens. And that's what I'm going to mark on the Tableau side of things. Okay. So 3.5 hours to do that, upload them when you're done. So I won't go through this in detail over the next couple of weeks, but on the last week before, which is not next week, the following week, 2 weeks from now, I'll just leave that open to see if anyone has any general questions about this before the exam the following week. Okay. And if you, of course, if you have any questions before then, if you're working on anything, you have my email and all that, so you can send it to me out email wise. Okay. So that's what I wanted to go through as far as the final exam to get you sort of prepped up for that now. And so I'll just leave it out there. Any other questions? What I want to do is I want to finish up today by talking a little bit about the auditing side of things. The final quiz will be next week. I wanted to get through what we've done today and what we'll do with the auditing part, and then the final quiz will be next week. Okay, and then that'll be it for any assessments until the final exam. So I wanted to walk you through a few things here and show you some of the things about auditing an HR department and auditing processes within HR. It is really a specialty. It's something that sort of, you get into this when you've been in HR in the position for a number of years, or in working in HR for a number of years, so you understand how different things are calculated within different areas. I don't think it's really something you'd go into immediately after as your first job in HR, unless you have a lot of support people around you to help you with things. It's one of those kind of positions. And like I said, some companies go external for it, some go internal and just audit it on their own. The manager decides that, every quarter we're going to pick a new area of HR, we're going to audit it to make sure we're okay, and just keeps that on a running schedule that they keep going through. It really depends upon skill level of your people, budget, all that kind of stuff, whatever other projects you've got on, it's really dependent upon that. So I grabbed some links here of things that I thought were important and I thought were good things to look at from the perspective of auditing. I'm going to start down here first, though, on looking at this. a couple videos here, or show you a couple things that are available. So this one here, conducting an HR audit. If I click on that, it takes me into LinkedIn. Okay, so right here, and there is a course here, a whole course, Administrative Human Resources, and there's one specific one on conducting an HR audit. But they've got a number of things in here now too. What's interesting here now is if I type human resources into LinkedIn Learning and click enter on that, look at all the different stuff they have HR related now here. So this is really, really good. And I've just sent a proposal into them that I want to do a couple data analytics ones on HR data to see if they're going to accept that. They don't have anything like that in here yet, so I think it might be a good fit on them. So I'm going to see if I can get, if they're going to accept a couple ideas that I've sent to them on that. So here's just a human resources video, and you get to see how many people have attended or at least signed up for and walked through some of the classes that are within here. And I thought it's kind of neat too. There are certain ones they have in here, which works more with the Society of Human Resource in the US than it does in Canada with the Human Resource Professional Association. I don't know why. I don't know enough about the distinction between those two groups. But they have certain courses in here that if you take them, they count towards credits in the US Society of Human Resource Management. So I'm going to ask some of our HR people a bit about that to see if they know anything about that and how our Canadian version of it maps up against the US and why we don't have equivalent sort of things within here. I don't know how to answer that, unfortunately. I'm sorry. I just kind of found that out this morning as I was nosing around in this and found that kind of a discrepancy between ours and theirs. But they have a number of things within here that are really, really good and ways to keep that, to keep your skills fresh as you're going forward and ways to revisit certain things and to learn some new things that maybe were talked about a little bit across our whole program, but now become more essential as you're in a position that it becomes more front and center than maybe we spent time on. So you can come in here and see some of those and walk through this. So definitely a good area they've expanded on here, because there's no other places that I've seen that have taken human resources this seriously to create this many potential courses that are within there. Even things like Coursera, they have some of them on here, but not to the same degree that we're seeing here. So I think it's very good for them. It's kind of hats off to what they're thinking anyway. Some of these you can see are more relevant and get a lot more people into them. Managing employee problems, 318,000. That makes sense. There's a couple in here that are sadly low. HR Human Resources, just an introductory video, 3,600. Not too many there. Yeah, I'm going to say this. It's probably like our second semester Human Resource course. You see, we've got a couple other here. There was another one where it was specifically about, can't find it right now, but it was specifically looking at the application, the HR application, Bamboo HR. And that didn't have very many people into that either. So, and even here, ensure humans are not resources, 2,500. It's like, I don't know what you're fixing there, but this is part of agile project development, I think. I think it just got into here because of the word human and resources. Don't think it really fits there. But very interesting. If you have time, take a look through there and just familiarize yourself on what is available. So as you can see from the human resource side, 222 full courses within here. So a lot of effort they're putting in here into HR now. I'm sure a lot of it has been driven by COVID. Now, some of them have been out there for a long time, and I haven't looked to see exactly the time frame. And I don't know if it allows me to search by that to see when they were released out. If it does up here, newest. So be interested to know how many of these ones that are up here, the new ones, are here because of COVID and everyone working from home and HR being forced to change the way that they connect with employees from face-to-face to an online environment. I'm sure a lot of that is showing up within here now too. But I just wanted you to see this of what's all available within here. I like this one. I thought I wanted to start with this one as the detailed one because I like what they've done here. So if I click on this, it takes me to this page. I don't know much about them. I've had this link up there for a couple of years. I don't know much about all of what this Spirit of HR is about, but this is an excellent article that they put up here for free. Okay, so they talk about human resource audit. What is it? A systematic, formal process to review or examine the current human resources policies, procedures, documentation, and systems to identify needs for improvement and enhancement, as well as to assess compliance with ever-changing rules and regulations. Okay, so that's part of what you're looking for within an audit. It doesn't have to be across the whole company, in the whole HR department. You focus in on areas. And they describe a bit more about it down here. And as we keep going down into it, says here's some of the purposes, some of the reasons to conduct a review of HR, ensure the effective use of the organization's human resources. And again, you think, great sentence, how do you do that? Just hold on, this is a fairly long, as you can see, I'm only here in the scroll down. They've got a lot of ideas within here. Review compliance concerns with a myriad of administrative regulations. So a lot of one sentence pronouncements here without any details on them. Other purposes, increase the effectiveness of the design of the implementation of the policies and procedures and so on. Go down a bit more. Steps in the auditing process. Number 1, briefing and orientation. Number 2, scanning material information. So they give you a nice little, not written out as a blueprint, but a nice little blueprint that you could use as a schedule for things that you want to look at. You could use this here as an idea. If you're auditing, if you are asked to audit a specific process within HR, this is a good, they've gone through a number of things here, and they're showing you part of what we do is survey employees and conduct interviews. So we get information back from the employees on a lot of things. When we want to test the effectiveness of policies or things we've got in, you ask the people, all right? And then we analyze their results afterwards. So a lot of what we've been doing in Excel, a lot of the tool like RapidMiner and Tableau, all those things come into how we would present results when we're looking at auditing, how we can verify what we're looking through, take that data, present it out at the end. That's really where all those things we've been looking at this semester lead towards, is how we show the results of an audit. Not just there, but it fits into auditing very nicely there. Conducting interviews, synthesizing, reporting. Audit of human resource functions. So now we break down to the function. Methods of the HR audit. Individual interview methods. So they're expanding out on some of these things that they discussed up there. Group interview, workshop method, questionnaire method. So they describe all these things out enough so that you understand what they're talking about. And then you can search more about to see if there's any other examples beyond what they're saying within here. Audit of employee satisfaction becomes a big one. These are some of the areas that you can audit when you're looking for employee satisfaction, if that ever comes up. So how happy are our employees here, satisfied with working for our company? And you say, I don't know. Here's areas that you can start to look at and figure out some questions on a questionnaire or a survey, send it out to all employees or a selection of employees, and use that to extrapolate across the company, depending upon what you get back. Ethical issues in human resource records, how we keep the records. Keep going down here. Research, looking at the various researches, effectiveness of the recruitment and selection process. Part of what we're doing here in the final exam piece. That's not so much recruitment and selection. It's at the end of the tail end of that, which is our acceptance after we've gone through recruitment and selection. We've selected who we want. What's our possibility that they're going to say yes? That's kind of what we're auditing, or what we're trying to understand in the final exam. That's what that whole process is about. Ways to conduct HR research. Again, interviews, down to questionnaires and so on. You can go down here, a little more integration between HRM and other technology functions within the company, like ERP systems that we talked about very early on. And down here, I missed one part. It was talking about, I think this is all of it right here. So how effective is your human resource information system within your HR department? How well is it doing at collecting all the information that you need? Or do you find that you've built a lot of subsystems off of that because it doesn't have everything you want? And then, so what is its effectiveness compared to all those secondary subsystems you've had to do? And is it time to maybe look at something else if you're building 2 or 3 completely different systems because one isn't doing it for you? It's not uncommon with HR to find that, but this shows you, here's how you can approach auditing those areas if they come up as something you're concerned about in an HR department. So I like this little link here, this article that they've done. I think they do a pretty good job of highlighting some key things within it anyway. Here's this link I put into, is your HR software setting you up for an audit? Okay, so it says within here, if you're thinking, do we need to audit anything? What this one comes back and says, here's a few areas you might be concerned, you might want to think about, and this could propel you to whether you need to do an audit on something. So it says here, even in small companies, HR can become difficult to keep organized and keep track of if carefully managed systems are not in place. Yeah. If HR records are kept manually, the sloppiness of one manager can be a red flag that invites audits. So one, payroll data does not match organizational charts. So if you're out of whack that way, if you have created an org chart for the company and you see it all laid out and it doesn't match where the pay systems are within the company, meaning usually at management, senior management, supervisory levels, and so on, they're at a certain level. If you have other people in positions what would be considered more reporting to positions that are above those, you might want to take a look at this. You've got something that's out of whack in either your payroll or the way that you have set up your hierarchy, your organizational structure within the company. So that's one of the places to look at. People have been terminated are still getting paid. Would not be the first time that's happened, especially in big companies. It can be very difficult. It sounds simple, but sometimes processes are very detailed in order to end something or to start something up. And ending takes less precedence than starting someone. When you hire someone up, everyone likes to make sure they get a good onboarding, they get paid when they're supposed to, they get paid what they're supposed to, and that continues on. When someone leaves the company, sometimes things will get a little sloppier there. It's because it's not a priority anymore. They've left. Okay, so yes, it's on my list of things to do. I'll get to it soon. And sometimes that soon just goes on and on and on. So if you find that this has happened and you're still paying people that are no longer with the company, oddly enough, people that continue to get paid oftentimes don't tell you. They don't contact you back and say, why are you still paying me? Some of them will. Some of them will just be happy to keep getting that money in and thinking, oh, maybe they owed me. Okay. Security access isn't tightly controlled. And that's part of what we've talked about in this semester of things, of looking security from the perspective of HR and how we want to make sure that permissions and all those things are correctly set up so we don't run into problems of who has access to things that they shouldn't have access to. Security access is something we have to constantly audit through. It's not something to do like once every 3 years or so. It's really something once a year you want to revisit and go through and make sure everything is through. If it's set up correctly, the only changes that are in there are going to be authorized by the people that have access to that. So you kind of start at the top of the hierarchy of people, see who has the most access, see what the changes are. An application like Zoho People keeps a record trail so that you can audit what all the changes are that have gone through. So do other HRIS applications. They'll keep that audit trail for you. So it's usually pretty easy to go back and see where have the changes occurred in this year or 6 months into this year, who had authority to do them, and who signed off on those changes being made. So you make sure all those things carry through. The auditing part, as you can see, as you start to think about this, probably what might be going through your mind is, when do you have time for this when you're doing the day-to-day stuff? And it's a good question. And there's not an easy answer to that. Sometimes it becomes, okay, in the summertime, we're going to hire in a couple interns for a couple months over the summer, and we're going to get them to work on stuff like this for us, where they can find out information. They don't have to create new policies or things. We just want them to find this information and to edit it for us or audit it so that we can see that we're in sync there. This is sometimes how companies do this. So you get people that are in HR at the time looking for co-op positions, all that sort of stuff is where they could help out in this kind of thing. Segregation of duties isn't clearly observable. That's always an issue. And I'm interested to see that this is coming up as specifically here as an HR one. And there's not much written about it there because generally this doesn't come so much within HR as much as in accounting. Accounting has more control, obviously, over the financial statements and the financial viability of the company. And that is really controlled by making sure that duties are segregated so that people can't post money or move money around within a company if they're not authorized to. And so HR has less capability to do anything financial other than what they have budget for. So it has some relevance within HR, but more as an accounting function here than it is an HR one. And many processes are manual. This gets into looking at organizations and saying, so are we a digital organization? Have we decided to go to digitize what we do? And if we have, then those policies and procedures should really be online and there should be a flow to them. If that's not the case and they're still manual, then we need to visit those and see how do we get those out of a manual state into online. When they're online, they're easier to audit because the information is digital, it's in one place. It's online, you can find it, versus filing cabinets and misfiled and all these other things that can happen. Usually the work is to get things in an online space, and it's not easy if the company hasn't done it, and that would precede doing any audit on it. If you're still doing you would audit to see are they still manual, and if they are, then the results of that is we need to move them online. We need to figure out which ones need to go, figure out a timeline of when we can do this and what people we need to get on our teams to get this done. Sometimes these things can go cross-functional too. Maybe more than just HR that has to be involved in getting processes online. You may have to deal with operations too if they become health and safety things that you want to move online. It might require you to talk to them and get their approval and input on things that are happening. So it does become sometimes more company-wide in some changes you want to make than necessarily just department-wide. But that's part of why you do an audit, to bring to visibility what you're not seeing. Because over time, the things that at that moment are important get flooded by everything else that is important, and they simply start to fall off. And often it's not by anyone's fault, it's just the nature of what our daily expectations are. And even people that are really good at creating lists and things for themselves can get bombarded with a number of things and lose capability of keeping that list in focus. It can happen to the people that are best at doing that. I'm not one of those, but I've seen it happen to people that are really good at doing this too. So taking a look at these things can tell you whether or not you need to look at auditing things. If you're looking for places to look at, this gives you some good things to start with, at least anyway. I put this one in too because I thought this was a good link for a questionnaire. So if you're thinking, okay, I'd like to audit this area and I'd like to create a questionnaire that I can send out to the employees, a survey, and get them to answer it. I'm not sure of what questions I should include in this. That's where I put this one in. So I thought this was pretty good. It's a PDF, but it's just open up. So there's a lot of verbiage in here that it talks about. And if we keep going down within this, eventually, it repeats a lot that was in that first document, or their own approach, but very repetitive to what was in the first document. And then we come down here, HR Audit Questionnaire Checklist. So they've got a lot of questions within here, separated into different sections within here. And we can look at these to see if any of these are applicable in our own environment. And then we can pick and choose the ones we want and use them in our own questionnaire or survey that we're creating up. Okay, and they're using a Likert scale on it here, or Likert scale on it. So we know how to use this and to analyze this. We've gone through that, so you can look back on that video and see the kind of things that we did to analyze this off afterwards. And you could also include those kind of open-ended questions in here, as far as, you know, what would you change? What do you think about this? What prevents you from doing your job effectively all the time? Any of those, then we can take those into RapidMine or Voyant tools, other tools, and analyze the text of those out. So however we want to structure this, we've got this one is really based upon more looking at just straight Likert scale results here as opposed to open-ended questions. But it's still got a number of them in here. And again, things that you can pick through, and you can use the ones that are more applicable within your own environment. This one here, I thought I'd put into 4 steps to a successful audit. So this breaks it down a little bit more. It was updated 2020, so that's why I kept this one. And it was getting a little old, but they did go through and update it, so that's good. So keep these 4 things in mind when you're evaluating a human resource information system. As you can see, steps for a successful HRIS audit. So we're looking for the system itself. So what is the system? What are the different types of systems that they've got? And they define them out here in more detail than I went into. And 4 questions you can ask yourself when auditing an HRIS system. Does the system support the achievement of your company's HR objectives? So is it strategically aligned with where you want to go as a company? Or is it not collecting any of those things that are going to help you determine, where in 5 years or a few years down you want the company to be? If it doesn't do that, then you have to ask, is this really the right software for us? If all you want is a record keeping system, then that's fine. And there are a number of HR systems to do that. But if you're looking for something beyond that, then this is the kind of question you have to ask yourself. Does the information available from the HRIS meet the needs of your HR team? Well, sometimes yes, and sometimes no. And again, that's very wishy-washy answer. But what you get from that is it collects a lot of the main record keeping stuff you want, but some of the external stuff may not be there. So for example, if we go back here and I open this up in Excel, this piece we looked at in Excel, yes, we're going to have the ID of the employee. We're going to have their last name. We're going to have the sex. We'll probably have what location they're out of within the company, how much we offered them or how much we're paying them. Is it keeping track of this? It might. We might have a special field put in there where we can put the education level, industry experience, hiring decision, what position, what department, great. This, probably not. Could we add it in? Probably. Like we saw with Zoho People, a lot of HR systems now allow you to go in and customize some of it, more if they're cloud-based and they're more progressive in the way they've designed it. You're still going to find some of them that what you see is all you get. There isn't any chance to modify anything that's within the design that they've created. You can take that data, export it out into Excel, and then add more things into Excel, but now you're building off onto a second system within there. And you really have to question, when you do that once, it opens it up to many, many times. You have to control those more, or when it comes to an HRIS audit, it's going to start to be a nightmare. Find out where are all the places that people are keeping HR information outside of the main system. Because then you want to find out, why are they doing that? What is it that's deficient in the system itself? Or are they just pack rats when it comes to data that they like their own copy? And the problem that happens with that is they will spend a lot of time making sure that their own version of the system is up to date, and less time making sure that the system that is company-wide is up to date. And that becomes a major problem. And what do we trust anymore? If everyone is working off of the HRIS, that has to be current. If you don't care about that and all you care is about your little system, then we can pretty well be assured that everything in the HRIS is going to be out of whack, and it's going to be really hard to get everybody back online with that. So you want to keep enforcing that into HR departments, that this counts number one, everything is secondary after that. We have to make sure the information in the HRIS is always updated, always current, always exact as we can get it, and everything else comes secondary. Often a problem we have within IT when we do audits of large systems is that problem specifically. Over time, departments create their own islands of information, and they don't tell IT about them because they kind of know we shouldn't be doing this. And if we tell IT, they're going to be a pain and tell us not to do that. So we won't tell them. Usually when we find out about this is someone's been keeping it on their hard drive for a long time and their hard drive fails. And then they come to us and say, well, can you restore that? And we go, restore what? And they say, well, our system that we had on there, our database we kept of all main things, we knew nothing about it. We weren't backing it up. Were you backing it up? Because we weren't doing it because we didn't know you were doing this. And this happens many times when there's a data loss is when this comes up. So you try to find these things before it happens. Sometimes from an IT perspective, when we get involved at this level within HR, when they're looking at systems, we'll go to them and say, you need to tell us up front, what are you doing outside of the HRIS? We need to be aware of that so we can make sure we're backing this up. We're not going to pass judgment on whether you should or shouldn't. We might look at it and see, can you get this data already somewhere else without you creating your own system on it? But we do want to make sure it's backed up, so we have a way to restore it if something goes wrong. And that's what we try to bring forward anyway from an IT perspective on it. So some of these things, yes and no, they might not be in the system. They might be a little external to it, or we might be able to modify the HRIS so we can add these columns and this information in, which would be the preferred way to do it. Then it just shows up as a question on screen when we hire someone that we can fill these things out. And then we have it all in one place again, the key part. The one place means it's backed up. And that's always what we're looking for. We have a way to recover if there's a problem. And if departments take it under themselves, then it's just nightmares that come. One place I worked at before, it was an automotive. And we had a department, an engineering department, that unknown to me in IT, running the IT department, they didn't have their own IT department at all, because I would have known that. But they had bought their own servers and they had bought their own software, and they had installed it on machines that were locked behind a door in another room that I knew nothing about until it failed. And that's when we found out about it at that point, when they were going crazy because their system had failed. And we were just going, well, don't worry, we haven't backed it up. We'll just tell us whose computer is down. We'll restore what you need. And then it started to come out that we knew nothing about this information that they kept it to themselves because they didn't want our involvement within it. And not the first time those things happen. And after that, we can just say, we can't help you. There's nothing we can do. We were not involved in this. We can send your computers off to companies that will extract the hard drives out and see if they can pull something from them. It's going to cost you a lot of money, but that's about all we can do at this point because we don't have this backed up. And this is where you want to go because you didn't tell us about it. Sometimes you do. Depends on the situation. But this is why we look at the data here and see what's within it. Is the data in the HRIS confidential and secure? So again, that was going through all the details to see who has access to what, where do the authorities and the authorization start and end within HR, what HR people can do what to what programs and what screens, and managers, supervisors, what can they see, what can they change, what can they add, what can they delete. And hopefully it's none of those add and delete is out of the way for anyone outside of the HR department. Most of that stuff you want to keep focused within HR so that you don't have things happening that you're not aware of. So that when changes occur, they occur in one department and are controlled, rather than having people outside the department in other areas. A supervisor being able to go into one of their employees' profiles and make changes to it. No, they can view it. They can view it. They can bring the employee in and verify things on it. But if they want changes, it goes to HR. Filter everything through there. Try to really hold on to that, because when it comes to auditing it afterwards, if that opens up, it's a nightmare to try to find out where all those tentacles have gone out, because it really expands beyond where you think it first did. You give authorization to one person to be able to change something, suddenly everyone wants that. And if you're not careful, you're going to lose control of your HRIS. Is the data that flows in and out of other systems reliable and secure? If your HRIS is a part of a larger ERP system, you're feeding into the HRIS from those systems and feeding out to it into finance. is that information secure, and is it actually, like it says here, is it reliable? And that's one of the things we often stress and keep stressing from an IT perspective, and you will from an HR perspective when you're looking at the acceptability of your own systems that are there, and that sort of a reliance. How much can we rely on the data here? How much do the people in the department in HR and other people entering things into the larger ERP system realize the importance of getting it right, as opposed to just saying close enough? The data needs to be right. A lot of times, this is why many companies go to scanning. Rather than have people enter things in, we want to scan it in, because the scanners tend not to make mistakes, not to the same level that people keying things into. And they don't, they just scan in and it goes into as a record, or they scan out. All different ways of getting things electronically into the system, which are usually always better when it comes to accuracy than somebody typing in. And we try to take more and more of that away. Even changes, anything else, if we can just scan in those changes, is a better way to do it than typing in. There's always going to be mistakes in typing. And sometimes they're not a big deal. Sometimes they can be, obviously. So we look at that part of it. So as you can see, from an auditing perspective, there's a number of things to look at from with HR. It's not a small little thing where we just sort of say, well, let's just look at everything the department does. You're going to be doing that forever. What we need to do is focus in on key areas. And what I wanted you to see within here is there are areas that we can focus on and just do those on a quarterly basis, on a twice a year, once a year, however we do it. Set up a schedule and stick to that schedule. Whether you need external help or you can do it internally, or offer advice to external help, have one person internally as partially dedicated to the team, whatever makes sense, you've got those choices to make. But making sure that HR is running efficiently, you don't know that unless you audit your processes every so often. IT, we do the same. This is where I've said before, the struggles that HR is having with technology and sort of being accepted as a valid partner within the company are the same things that IT had 15 years ago. We were going through the exact same stuff before HR did. So we've got the bruises within there, and HR is struggling with some of that in some cases now, getting that same acceptance. Like I said, in a lot of cases, the perception of HR is still as sort of this necessary evil within the company, but they're really not a part of the whole strategy of the company, which is totally wrong. But HR has to present itself in such a way that they do belong at that table and can say, our processes are audited and effective the same way that yours are. We value these things. We know the value of HR as a department because we've evaluated what the cost of benefits are, what our employee costs are, all these other things. We need to be at that table too. We can bring insight into it that you guys are all missing. I'm just saying guys, but that you're all missing. Okay, so a lot of it relies on HR to build that momentum up, to be respected within the company, because it is. When I was still auditing not auditing, but not on a full-time basis, but when I was still out consulting, it was not uncommon to find HR departments that were just not a part of anything. They were really just there. People looked at them as payroll, and if you're looking for prescriptions or you need your new glasses, go talk to HR. Outside of that, not really. And it's sad, and it's really sad. But I think more companies are seeing the value of that, and that's part of why we've gone through human capital value add to see the value that HR brings to a company in dollars and cents beyond what the expectation was in the past, which was just people, just a bunch of people persons within the company. Now it's extended out far beyond that. Okay. So that's what I wanted to talk about when it comes to auditing today, just to sort of give you a bit of an introduction within there to the areas to look at. Any questions? Have any of you been through any audits before, whether they're HR audits or financial audits? In any of your roles, Allison or Natasha, in your roles within companies, have you ever been a part of an audit?
Not directly, but because theater operates on a not-for-profit basis, they have to take part in financial audits every year. So I've certainly provided information for that process, but I've never been a part of it.
Okay.
Honestly, no, not really. Haven't really been a part of that.
They can be a lot more fun to be a part of than they can be to be on the receiving end of an audit. They can take a lot of time, they can take a lot of effort, but when you're sort of overseeing it and you're part of the data, the audit information collecting and assessing what's there, that part can actually be interesting. It'll give you insight into the department and how it connects into other areas of the company that you wouldn't see any other way. So if you're ever asked, if a project ever comes up to audit something within a company and they're looking for people to be a part of that, if you have the time, sign up for it, because you'll be amazed at how much you can learn about where processes are efficient, where they're not efficient, and how things connect, because audits explore all of that. So they're really neat from that perspective. Okay, that's all I wanted to go through for today. So that's enough for today. Are there any questions before we call it?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks both of you. And I will see you next week, which next Tuesday. And what we're going to talk about then is we're going to look at, we're going to talk a little bit about here HR ethics and cognitive bias a little bit. And we're going to go into social graphing, because I want the last class to be any review that if anyone has any questions. Okay, see you next Wednesday.